Now, the scientist and obesity expert who coined the term ultra-processed food says that there needs to be a tobacco-style health warning. We've all seen the ones that we're referring to, the ones that could have a picture of a disease lung, like really stark text telling you about the risk. There you go, like that. But on food, they may look something a little bit like this. But would this make you pause if you were reaching for, let's say, a box of cereal, something like that? Or a fizzy drink could look something like that? Do we need cigarette-style warnings on junk food? Do get your calls in for this. Now, Lowri, you used to smoke. Did these warnings help you quit?
No, that's the thing, I think. Once you're kind of doing something, you know it's not good for you, whether it's drinking, whether it's smoking, whether it's eating, really unhealthy food. It's amazing how blind you can be to all the common sense reasons why you should not be doing that. So actually, I think you see it the first time. Even like cigarettes used to have pictures of like, well, this will kill you. And I would completely ignore that and open my cigarette. That's just in the way. So I think it will have very little effect.
But that is addiction, isn't it? So in a situation where you're not necessarily...
And food can be addictive too.
Absolutely, but in a situation where you're not necessarily addicted to the food or you're about to offer it to your child, for example, could that make you think twice?
I remember being in a pub outside Leeds, and it was a Sunday lunchtime, and it was quite a rough pub, and I watched the one woman who was pregnant necking a pint of lager while she handed full-fat Coke to her very small children. So, no, it's amazing, again, how people can ignore it. I do think that the cost is interesting. If there was some way to tax those foods to make fresh food cheaper and more available, there are food deserts out there where you can't get fresh food. That will be really effective, because at the moment high processed food is quite cheap, and if you're on a low income, that box of sugary cereal lasts quite a long time. It doesn't go off. Fresh food goes off.
But then, sorry to interrupt, but then it comes down to education, because for many ethnic groups in this country, they will buy staple foods, pastas, rice, huge bags of the stuff that is still cheaper than these processed foods. I think we should definitely have cigarette-style labels on these foods. Not like that. It's got to be more severe. It's got to be a fatty liver. It's got to be someone looking morbidly obese, or someone in a hospital bed who's dying of heart failure because of all the fatty foods they've been having. The government, successive governments, not just the Tory one, successive governments have failed lower socioeconomic areas. As you're completely right, Lowri, if you're working too many hours, you have a low income, you go to convenience stores. There's 5 times as many convenience stores in the poor areas than the rich ones. They're selling us alcohol, the sugary treats, the fizzy drinks, the chocolate, even the stuff we're told is good for us, baked beans or meat-free things like soya. Those still are ultra-processed. They're still bad for us. But those areas are now flooded with these things, and you're completely right, the addiction and the vice is there. So when you want something quick, you go and buy the cheap pizza from the corner shop, or you go to your numerous takeaways.
But you bring up an interesting point. Ultra-processed food seems to be absolutely everywhere, and there's the scale. Some things are much, much worse for you than others. And also, if you are in one of these food deserts, as Lowri says, or you're really suffering from the cost of living crisis and you need things that are going to stay in your shelf for a long time in order to feed your family, are you just going to make those families and those parents feel guilty for purchasing this stuff?
If they don't have another option, yes, the danger is you simply stigmatise them. I think it's a long-term plan about education, making fresh food more available and cheaper. Definitely, when they put the money on sugary drinks, they made it more expensive to sell a sugary drink than a non-sugary drink. You did see a change in behaviour from manufacturers. So there is also pressure to be applied to manufacturers about pricing. If you put certain ingredients in your products, you have faced some kind of financial penalty. But it's not an easy area. It's a very complex area because. So, for example, if you're just talking about fat content, an avocado would
be very high.
Exactly. So it's about what kind of fat, it's about fat and what, it's about
but
sugar.
We've already been through the sugar and the fats, and that is now traffic light labelled on most foods. So we've got to that. Yes. What we're talking about here is ultra-processed. So we're talking about food that has substances on it that are chemicals. They're not actually food. And now the World Health Organization are warning against consuming large quantities of these products, which is rather warning in and of itself. Let's go to the calls now. Peter from Motherwell, what do you think? Would you be happy to see big warning labels across sugary cereals, for example?
Definitely not. Definitely not. And can I just say that I have always eaten my scones that way. I'm from Motherwell. So,
you're kidding, Peter. So you eat it like a sandwich?
Yep.
Sorry, could you explain
OK, so there was a debate earlier on in Jeremy's show, just to clear up if you've just switched on, whether you have it the Cornish ware the way they have it in Devon, whether your scone, whether you put cream on first or jam on first. The first time I went out with my husband, he ate it like a sandwich because he'd never had a scone before. So we said that was the Motherwell way. Now Peter's called for Motherwell. Turns out my husband isn't the only one.
Yeah, completely.
OK, but on to the ultra-processed food, which actually, if you're cooking scones at home, I'm not sure they count as an ultra-processed food.
No, they wouldn't, because they're made of flour and butter and
all the things that you would have in your kitchen cupboard. OK, well, let's move on from scones then, shall we? And why no warning labels, Peter?
I just think it's a pointless exercise because you see the effect of warning labels. You can't get anything more dramatic or desperate that's saying smoking kills on a packet of cigarettes. Doesn't deter people.
I do understand, but that's probably when addiction has kicked in. I'm imagining, I'm just posing this as a suggestion. Whereas with food, if you are a parent and you're thinking, it'll be fine to just give them a can of fizzy juice, or it's fine to just give them a chocolate bar or a packet of crisps. If you pick up that individual item and you see a big warning label, you think, actually, you don't need that. What you need is a piece of fruit, or what you need is, something healthier.
I think it's a bad day when you need a warning label to actually make you think, but I think it's more complex than that, really. There's a lot of affordability. If they made healthier food a bit cheaper, then that might help.
That
but
is
also,
part of what they're
it's
asking for, Peter.
Personal responsibility and everything in moderation, really.
Yes, everything in moderation. Although moderation, but every time someone says that, Jeremy says, yeah, but poison. It's not everything in moderation. There are some things you should just absolutely not have. But Lowri, as a nutritionist, do people know what ultra-processed food is? Do people actually, are we conscious as a society in general what is actually in our food? Because I've been educated in this and I had no idea what's in some of our food.
I think I get commonly people who come to me and say, well, I'm doing really well, I'm not eating any meat, but I'm eating, vegan, blah, blah, blah. And that's a packaged, processed food. So no, I think people aren't always aware. There is an awful lot more work to do in terms of education.
And it is everywhere, even in the breads that you buy in supermarket. It's very hard to find bread. You're paying £6 a loaf if you don't want the added extras of your PF in there.
But I just think you're speaking as a relatively new parent of just one child. Push yourself on to maybe 2 children, 3 children, or even more, and you gradually get worn down, Storm. You're not reading. You're not trying to read the back of a packet.
And I understand, but worn down doesn't make it right. The fact that parents are tired shouldn't mean that that's the only option open to them. Should it?
Well, I think
that's when government has to step in to make it easier for parents when it is really tough.
We are in danger, particularly of stigmatising working mothers. When I was a kid, my mother was at home. She cooked from scratch because she shopped every day because she was at home. But then she started working, and we had Marks and Spencer suddenly come into the house because she was working.
Well, that's anecdotal. My mother was working 2 jobs, and she was still making rice and beans and using frozen vegetables and tinned vegetables to feed us, and that's why I look as healthy as I do today. So it's yes, you get tired parents, but I think, Storm, you're absolutely right. Being tired is not an excuse to say, actually, I'm going to end up giving my kids something that may lead to diabetes.
I phrased that wrongly. I wasn't saying that it's not an excuse. What I'm saying is that there isn't another option in the supermarkets.
There is.
Whether you're tired or whether you're not tired, it's very hard to find, and it's expensive. It's £6 for a loaf without any of the added extras. So it's very hard.
But then maybe you shop at an actual market rather than a supermarket. Maybe you're buying frozen veg instead of having to go down for the fresh fruit, veg route. Tinned fruit also is a good option for fruit. It lasts long. You can keep that for forever, essentially. So
although it is normally covered in syrup, is it not?
You can get it in water as well.
You can, yeah.
Peter, maybe I just get the syrup stuff. Peter, thank you very much for your call. Jamie from Somerset, what's your thoughts when it comes to ultra-processed food? Do we actually know what it is, or do we need these warning labels?
Well, some people will know what it is, but this whole cigarette-style warning labels on junk food, if they wanted to put it on junk food and junk food like fizzy drinks and all this kind of junk food, then they're going to have to go as far as putting it on fast food stuff as well, because fast food is junk food. So if they want to do it, if they want to put it on junk food, they'll have to put it on all of that, all of the fast food stuff. So it will just be too. It's a bit drastic, which I totally understand, as the previous caller said. and it won't deter people. But if they want to put it on junk food, they have to put it on all junk food, including fast food, in my opinion.
Yeah, so if they do that, I think whoever came up with this would probably agree with you, Jamie. If we do that, you're happy with that? You think that it could work potentially?
It could work. I mean, you know, I have the odd McDonald's here and there. I won't lie. I don't eat it a lot. I have it here and there once in a blue moon. But you know, it will deter some people, but not everyone.
Well, what do we do then? Because obesity is literally crushing the NHS. It is costing the NHS so much money. What do we do to try and curb our eating habits?
I think it's down to, in my opinion, the way I thought about it is I think it's down to the individual person. You know, it's like, you know, it's down to them, you know, to kind of curb their own eating habits. I mean, yes, there is help out there for that, but
I think
like you say, yeah.
I mean, I think we live in a food-obsessed culture. I think that everywhere you turn, there are adverts for food. I think that, you know, again, when I was a kid, we didn't have an Indian, a Thai, a Chinese, a Japanese, and there wasn't this need to have variety. I've got to have that one day and a different taste and a different taste, and that builds appetite. And that's like going to a buffet every single day. Oh, I'll try some of that, I'll try some of that. And that this kind of, it was just being driven by capitalism to get us to consume more and more and more and more. That's really difficult to unpick. Yeah. So availability of healthier food would be the number one thing, I think, particularly.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to with the bread, really, is that it's very hard to make good choices when the only choices available to you are not particularly healthy ones. Jamie, thank you very much for your call. Marlene from Bath, when it comes to ultra-processed foods, do you think we understand them fully and the effects that they have on us?
No, we don't. But I think that they need to do something in relation to the foods we're eating. And the problem is this. People are too lazy to cook. I've seen people coming out of school with their children and they run straight into a McDonald's. It's the worst thing you can feed your children. It's easier. The money they spent in McDonald's, you can have a healthy meal by buying fruits and vegetables and cook it. And if people spend the time to cook, there is things like fish, which is cheap. You can get mackerel, which is full of omega-3. You've got lots of vegetables you can buy in the supermarket. They're selling vegetables at a very low price. And if you buy that vegetable, you can make a meal from that with very little. So you don't need a lot of money to be able to feed your family properly or feed yourself properly. It's just that people are too lazy. Convenience, and that's the problem that's killing people.
Okay, and how do we get over that, Marlene? Do you think that putting a big health warning on whatever you're getting from the fast food restaurant will make parents think twice about offering it up to their children and might make parents think, I'll just go home and make a batch of soup?
Yes. I think that's a good idea because I think parents are not educated and they should be. There's some way of warning for them to let people know, to let them know these unhealthy processed food is really bad for both themselves and both their children. And we see today there is so many millions of people in this country are suffering with diabetes, and this is because of eating unhealthy foods all the time. And it's easier to go home and buy. My fridge is full of vegetables, and I make a meal out of that. Celery, carrots.
It may not be easier for some people, Marlene, but certainly healthier.
Marlene,
I just want to go
just
because
the idea of saying to my
reacted
kids, "Oh, I've just made a lovely batch of soup. Will I be pouring that straight down the sink?" They won't eat it. Now, obviously, it's a negotiation with your family if you've got multiple children about what you eat and what they're going to eat. And I think for me, one of the really worrying things of the last 5 years is delivery food. And it's the amount of delivery food that kids want to order. And I don't do any delivery food. But that, you have no idea what's that in. You have no idea how much fat and salt and sugar and additives. And the portion sizes are huge. So in terms of obesity, it's not all about ultra-processed food. It's about the volume we're eating as well as
accessible it all is.
The government should go one step further and ban chemicals in foods. When you've got a young boy at home, when you buy formula, no matter what brand it is, there are strict rules and regulations on basically you're buying the brand. Everything in every single bit of baby formula is the same because that's what the government insists because they know how dangerous it is for our kids to be having too much of anything. So why can't they do that for all foods?
OK, Marlene, thank you very much for your call. Debbie from Renfrewshire, what's your thoughts when it comes to UPFs?
I think we need to know. We have to be told. We're not told enough. We are just guided along by the government and told that everything is OK and just eat that product.
Debbie, do you not think we're warned do you not think we're warned quite often how sugary some of our cereals are, or the fact that too much chocolate makes you fat? Do you know? I mean, I would say that is a message that is out there.
Yes, but everything as you see that's ultra processed in the supermarket is colourful, bright. Wants children to buy it, they go straight to the colourful packets. We need things not to be so in your face all the time. They need to be a wee bit.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, and there's almost a sort of subtle advertising to children, just in sort of colours that they use and things, potentially to children. I wonder whether it's even more insidious than that. Things like pasta sauces and things that might look like they contain lots of vegetables or seemingly appear to be healthy have these UPF chemicals in them. And I would say that a lot of the population, myself included until very recently, had absolutely no idea that they were in there. And I suppose that's what these labels would fight against, that sort of lack of education, Lowri, that if I saw that, I'd think, oh, might want to look at the back of that.
The problem is, as with anything, if you have to label everything, the contents of the entire supermarket, and then it ceases to have any effect whatsoever. I'm not anti the idea of nudging people to healthy diet. Obviously, I'm not anti that, but I don't think it's effective.
OK, Debbie, thank you very much for your call. Martin from Flintshire,
Can I just say my Welsh family come from Flint Mountain, Martin. So
oh, well, there you go.
My neck of the woods.
Practically related.
Yeah.
Martin, warning labels on unhealthy foods.
I totally agree. I think information is critical for people to know exactly what they're putting in the body. I mean, I went to the shops the other day, just a quick one. You know, there was I'm a single person. I live on my own. So there's a big package of mushrooms. So I was only going to have a bacon and a mushroom sandwich. Simple. But I've turned the rest of the mushrooms into a soup. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, some Stilton cheese, there you go, you've got soup. It's easy. And people just can't seem to be bothered by putting a pan on the stove and making something out of, you know,
I don't want to make excuses for people, but people are very busy and working, and maybe they don't know. Their parents never made food in front of them, so there's a sort of lack of education, or their brain doesn't work that way to use up all the spare stuff that's in the fridge. It's a very complicated matter, but it sounds, Martin, like you've absolutely got it sorted in your house anyway.
I think most people would say that a home-cooked meal tastes better than any amount of ultra-processed stuff, absolutely. So it's about there are kitchens that are opening up now in the middle of housing estates, for example, where people come in and they eat freshly made food and then they're taught how to make. You know, the stuff is happening to try and counter this.
Yeah. Just maybe not quick enough
maybe
at the moment. Martin, thank you very much for your call. Thanks for all your calls on that.